Lord continued, "My dear Rishi, O leader of the living entities, for those who serve me in devotion by worshipping me, especially persons like you who have given up everything unto me, there is never any question of frustration." Purport: even if he has some desires, one engaged in the service of the Lord is never frustrated. Those engaged in his service are called sakama and akama. Those who approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead with desires for material enjoyment are called sakama, and those devotees who have no material desires for sense gratification, but serve the Supreme Lord out of spontaneous love for him, are called akama. Sakama devotees are divided into 4 classes: those in distress, those in need of money, the inquisitive, and the wise. Someone worships the Supreme Lord because of bodily or mental distress. Someone else worships the Supreme Lord because he is in need of money. Someone else worships the Lord out of inquisitiveness to know him as he is. And someone wants to know the Lord as the philosopher can know him, by the research work of his wisdom. There is no frustration for any of these 4 classes of men. Each is endowed with the desired result of his worship. Navai jatu mishayavasyat prajajakshamadharhanam bhavad videshu atitaram mayi sangribhitatmanam. The Lord continued, "My dear Rishi, O leader of the living entities, for those who serve me in devotion by worshipping me, especially persons like you who have given up everything unto me, there is never any question of frustration." So, certainly, quite a few people are most interested in sense gratification of various types, and therefore they worship the Supreme Lord. Some are eager to worship the Lord because they will get out of it the freedom from their material bodily pain. Some persons are suffering and they have pain, and therefore they worship God, hoping that their bodily pain will be reduced. And there are the next class who are looking for money. They want to become wealthy. They need to increase their wealth as much as possible, as much as they can. So that class of man also, he worships the Lord in order to get more wealth. Then there's a class of man who's looking to find out something, some kind of investigative work is going on. God becomes the subject of his investigation to understand whether or not he will find that this is the right goal, or he will have some possibility to surrender. And finally, there are those who are looking for knowledge. And those who are looking for knowledge are doing research work into the absolute truth. These 4 classes of men are all known as magnanimous souls, but of them, 2 of them at least have pretty gross desire included. The 3rd one also has some desire there. The 4th class, that is the Jnani who looks for knowledge, he also has some desire there, but it's less. In other words, simply to solve your bodily problems, that's a pretty gross desire. Then, to get a lot of money, that's also gross desire. Just to find out something through investigation, although you're not sure what you're finding out, that's also some desire. Curiousness, that's also material desire, in a sense. And research work, that could also be a material desire if one was going to get sense gratification on the mental platform out of his research. Like we find many professors in the school, they're very much into their own brain, their own intellect, and they get a lot of sense gratification out of playing with their own intellect. Yeah, they like that very much. Jnani type. But if we look at this in another way, we see that they are all devotees if they're trying to surrender to the Supreme. Because after all, these classes of man can also exist as pure materialists too. An ordinary atheist can also try to get relief from his bodily pain. But he won't surrender to Krishna to get relief from his bodily pain. So an ordinary materialist can also search for money, but he won't surrender to Krishna to find out his money. Similarly, he won't make an investigation into God to satisfy his curiosity. Neither will he do any research about the absolute truth. So these classes of men also exist within the human society. However, they don't exist in the same way as those men who are looking to satisfy their desires within the Supreme. Therefore, that class of man who tries to approach Krishna, even with desire, is called a sakama devotee. A devotee who has material desires which he wishes to fulfill. Sakama devotees are many. In fact, most devotees of the Lord in this material world are sakama. There's some desire there. Only when one becomes akama, which means completely freed from all desires, can he be counted amongst the topmost class of devotees, freed from all material desires. He doesn't care whether he's happy or sad, sick or healthy, wealthy or poor, whether he has any capacity to manage anything or investigate anything or manipulate anything. And simply he's satisfied with the Shastra and knowing the absolute truth, Lord Shri Krishna. Akama. No interest in any satisfaction of any particular desire, except the desire to serve and love and satisfy the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. So, we find these different classes of devotees are there. And these different classes of devotees certainly are all magnanimous souls to a certain extent. Is that window open? And although they are magnanimous souls to a certain extent, they are known as more or less advanced according to the desires they have. But Krishna, because he's so merciful, doesn't mind what desire you have. He says, my devotee who worships me in love will have his desires fulfilled. There's never any question of frustration. In other words, Krishna is promising that his devotees will not be frustrated. Although there may be so many reasons why one should be frustrated in this material world, and there are plenty. Krishna says, my devotee who's serving me shall never be frustrated. My devotee who's serving me shall always have that which he so much desires, but, as it is stated in the previous verse, but not that which will disturb his devotion. Because a devotee is a devotee because he desires to serve and satisfy the Lord. Therefore, if that overriding desire is to be disturbed, then he shall not get his material desire fulfilled or his desire fulfilled. In other words, so long as you've got the desire to serve Krishna, that is considered to be the topmost desire. And other desires will not be allowed, or will not be allowed to disturb that topmost desire. So, if Krishna knows, of course he knows everything, that you want to be a devotee, but you also want something which is completely contradictory to that, then Krishna will not give you the contradictory thing, because the overriding desire, that desire to be a devotee, will not allow it to take place. But if one diminishes his desire to be a devotee, then these other secondary desires may predominate. This example is given in relationship to the weeds and the creeper of devotion. The creeper of devotion grows up to the spiritual sky, to the lotus feet of Krishna. But if some weeds develop around the tree, and one does not pluck out those weeds, then those weeds become very strong and they start to choke the creeper of devotion. And one would allow such weeds to become strong because his desire to be a devotee is not so strong. His desire to serve and love Krishna is not so strong. Therefore, he will allow these very nasty, dangerous weeds of material desire to grow, and they will usurp the position of the creeper, choke it off, make it very dangerous for that creeper's existence. Therefore, one should always be very careful to uproot the weeds of material desire which come within the heart of an aspiring devotee. You can make it a little more. Within the heart of the aspiring devotee, weed may be there. So what is to be done? One has to, of course, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam classes, if the speaker has any experience, he can display to the audience in various ways their weeds within the heart. Yeah. And the audience, if it has any experience, will accept that. So they say, who cares, if we're a little crooked? Because they don't understand how much trouble it is. Because they never think that I'm going to be 30 one day and that's going to mean me. So they don't understand this because of lack of intelligence. But those who are trained properly, they are forced into the situation of proper action. Then they can understand how to sit and learn. And it helps them to keep straight back. So these different chicks are there in all aspects of material life. And in spiritual life, that's there as well. Of course, not that maintaining straight back, but maintaining straight spiritual existence. That is why we have our programs, which every day we should come to. We chant our rounds, which every day we should chant in here. Early, nicely, and then I'm not even going to mention taking prasadam because there's no problem whatsoever in that department. Then we should serve very enthusiastically. Because our minds are so that even though we understand that we're not going to finish this marathon in time, the mind says, so what? Somebody else will work. I can space out all morning long and come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and then work hard for 3 hours and feel very satisfied. No! One must understand the mind is going to cheat us like this. Always going to make some trick so that we waste half the day, every day. Therefore, one has to face the whip and actually understand how to push forward. This is a good test. It's a good lesson. That even though one understands something must be done, he still doesn't do it. That is a good lesson to show how actually weak we are. So you can imagine, this is just one little lesson. A little bitty construction lesson. Can you imagine when death is coming? Death is coming any day, and we know it. And even at the time when we're old and we know death is coming, still the mind cheats us and says, what are you worrying about? You'll live another year. Even though death may be coming tomorrow, the mind will say, don't worry about it. You don't have to think of Krishna. Here, just space out for a while. It's more fun. And in this way, when the death actually comes, we're unprepared because we have not practiced properly. The strength is not there, just like the back, which is crooked because it is not strong, because of being improper in the youth. Similarly, the mind will not be strong. And when the test comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of death, the test will not be passed because one will not be strong to pass the test. Yeah. So we have to learn how to pass Krishna's test. That test is a big test, the test of death. One has to learn how to pass that test, so that he will, at the time of death, go right back home, back to Godhead. Not that he will go right back to womb. To try once again to enjoy his senses. No. One should learn how to make a solution to the problems of life. And that solution is very much required. And one should be careful what he desires too. Because if you desire something material, Krishna will arrange it for you. Because if your desire to be a devotee is not that strong, you will get these material things that you want. We have seen it time and time again, how somebody can leave the movement if he wants. If he has a big desire, actually I want to be a materialist, but he just can't admit it to himself. Then Krishna arranges it so that you can find all kinds of fault with others. People will just say the wrong thing at the wrong time and you'll immediately get all disturbed in your mind. Krishna will arrange it so that circumstances are a little difficult. For instance, when the worshipful prasadam is placed before you, somebody steps on your plate and chunk, it falls over, and there are no more seconds. And then the mind starts screaming, yelling, hollering, doing flip-outs. Because, after all, there's nothing more worshipful than prasadam. And you become very agitated that somebody should blaspheme prasadam, although that same person could have done anything to the deities or anything other devotees couldn't have cared less. So then, one's material desires start to overrule his little bit of intelligence, and he has the opportunity to go away and feel very proud of himself. So Krishna will satisfy that desire, and we've seen it. So one should understand, he should be very careful what he desires. If he's desiring something nasty, he'd better watch out, because he may get it. And when he gets it, he's finished. Because then he'll be attached in this material world and fall down. And when falling down, it's very, very hard to get back. Just like we've seen when people leave Krishna consciousness, it's very difficult for them to come back. And if they leave again, it becomes almost impossible for them to come back. Because once you go into the grips of Maya, Maya doesn't like to let you go. Maya says, oh, now I've got you, so you stay here. And once in the grip of Maya, one starts thinking, yes, there's nothing wrong with Maya. These devotees, they're just fanatics, saying there's something wrong with Maya. Look here, I've got this girl, she now talks sweet words to me. The other brahmacharis never talk sweet words to me. Yeah, but how long these sweet words come? And just stop supplying the money and see how long the sweet words come. That's the material world. And one's going to suffer like that. So, one should be very, very careful. This material world is a suffering place. One should realize it. Of course, we realize it. Every day. Every minute. Just like, look at this room. If the windows open too much or they open the door down there, all the cold air zooms across the room, we're all freezing. Then they shut the door down there, or then the window goes boom, and then there's no more cold air in here, and we think it's nice for 2 minutes. Then it starts to get stuffy and you can't breathe anymore. And you start to fall asleep. Then you're suffering that way. Then you say, open the door. Then they open the door, boom, the thing goes zoom out. All the cold air zooms over again. That's just the way it is. It's always like this. It's always like this. The material world is a continuous problem. Just simply this way or that way, it's a problem. And you're always solving the problem. And some people, they get a great bliss out of solving problems. They think, if I can just keep solving problems, this is ecstasy. Here, another problem comes before me, the great protector of humanity. And I will solve that problem for the benefit of mankind. Aren't I wonderful? Like the great Father. But, unfortunately, you're not always appreciated. Many persons who did wonderful things for humanity, who now we remember in the history books. But at the time they were living, nobody could care less about them. They died in poverty. How many great personalities, so-called, from the material point of view, died in poverty? Or were shot in the head? Piles of them. In fact, many more than had a nice recognition while they were alive. Just like great writers, generally while they're alive, nobody could care about them. And 25 years later, they're discovered. And boom, it's a big fad to read their books, and they're very famous, and everybody thinks, oh, how great he must have been, and how wonderful it must have been to live like him. And he lived in an old shack somewhere with a gray beard because he couldn't afford a razor blade. Skinny and frustrated like anything because nobody cared about what they wrote. The material world's like that. Of course, yes, there are instances of great happiness. Sure. But there are also suffering conditions with that too. Many different times there are various forms of troubles. Oh, we have experience of this, but the mind doesn't let us realize it. The mind doesn't let us think about it. Just every minute of the day the body is causing us trouble, but the mind doesn't let us think about it. When it's hungry or it ate too much, we don't consider this as a problem of life. We just think it's something temporary which will go away. Headache comes, we think this is temporary, it goes away. Bodily diseases come, we think it's temporary, it will go away. We don't realize, yeah, it's temporary, it will go away. But it's not that we're going to have a happy condition coming in too. A condition of happiness is not going to replace it. Just another problem will come which we'll think is temporary and go away. In this way people live their lives always thinking for the day when it will be nice. They go to work on Monday thinking about Saturday, Friday night, when we get freed from the work and we can go out and enjoy like anything. And they think like this. Always they're reaching out for that moment when there will be happiness. But what do they get at that time? They don't get happiness either. But then they're thinking about the next moment when there will be happiness. And in this way our lives are mainly packed up with moments when we're thinking about when it will be nice. And then when it does become nice for some short period of time, we start squeezing that moment to squeeze out as much ecstasy as we can. And we talk to others about it, and we just say, yeah, isn't this great, isn't this fantastic? And while you're saying, yeah, isn't it great, isn't it fantastic, you're not enjoying anything. But it's necessary to keep convincing yourself that it's great and fantastic. Of course, sometimes for some short period of time, there's some actual sense gratification. And at that time, then we think this is the perfection of life. There's some moment, even during prasadam, when you actually taste it. When it actually goes in the mouth and you taste it, and you're happy about that. Some like 3 seconds, maybe milliseconds, I'm not sure. But mainly the rest of the time the brain's spacing out something, or you're just shoveling it in. Just shovel, shovel, shovel. Getting it in as fast as possible to pack up the belly as fast as possible. And talking with others too. And sometimes you talk about how good it is while you're shoveling it in, which means you're not tasting anything because you're talking. And yet we think, this is life. The material world's so nice. See how I'm enjoying this and that and the other thing. A materialist, he'll never understand this point about his sense gratification being very, very little. He'll never understand how even during the eating process, he's not actually tasting. Even if you tell him, he'll say, yeah, it's a fact. And then he'll forget all about it. Because that's the nature of the material world. The nature of the material world is like that. It's a very, very strange place. It's completely illusory. The whole thing is illusion from top to bottom. And the only ones who can conquer this illusion are the devotees of the Lord who, while chanting and hearing and understanding the spiritual life, work like anything for the satisfaction of Krishna, to spread the holy name and the glories of the holy name and the philosophy of Krishna consciousness throughout this world. So, our Krishna consciousness movement is practically the only place where there's sanity. And therefore, we should practice. We should practice this to strengthen the mind, to make the mind strong. We actually have to train ourselves and our own devotees to become strong. This is the first and foremost thing. Even in 1970, Srila Prabhupada, when there was only 300 devotees in the whole movement, said, we have enough devotees now. Now we have to train them to become first-class men. There's only 300, but he said we have enough. Because he thought 300, that's plenty. If you make 300 first-class men, they can take over the world in 10 days. So here we are many years later, and we have maybe 10 times more, 15, 20 times more, I don't know. But where are the first-class men? So we have to start training ourselves to become first class. And therefore, whatever activity we are doing, we should do it in a first-class way. Learn our philosophy in a first-class way. Learn our devotional practices in a first-class way. And above all, learn how to surrender. Because there have been plenty who learned all the songs in the songbook backwards and forwards. They know Sanskrit and Bengali. They know how to throw the water from the Achman cup. They know how to wear their chadar in just a very fine way. They know how to fold their dhoti with all the pleats in the front like this. They know how to wear the shoes with the spike in between the toes. They know how to look really pukka. They stamp the tilak on their arms. They look like real brahmanas. And later on they become night watchmen or something stupid like that. Real estate agents. They become very perfect. They know everything, exactly how to act. But that's not what it means to become first class. That's just external. There are many persons who become externally very first class. They just really look like really something. They got all these so-called pseudo-Brahminical things together. And they can even quote something from the Shastra. But they don't know what it means, in fact. Because in fact it means you serve Krishna. I can't right now. I'm busy all day putting on stamps and throwing water and washing my Brahmin thread. Therefore, no time to surrender. Well, here we need this done now. This must be done now. No, I have no time. I'm busy being a Brahmana. I'm busy being first class. But that's 10th class. One who's first class is he who surrenders now, when it's needed. Do the needful is first class. That means surrender, and surrender is first class. When you do what must be done, when it must be done, for Krishna, as he wants it, that's first class surrender. And to such a person, all knowledge is revealed within the heart. Automatically. That is a fact. Such, even a simple devotee who's first class surrendered like this knows more than a big so-called great, who may have so much so-called knowledge but doesn't know how to surrender to Krishna. The example is given in the Bhagavatam of the Brahmanas and their wives, yogic Brahmanas and their wives, when Krishna sent the cowherd boys to beg some charity in the name of Krishna and Balaram. So, the Brahminical, so-called Brahminical fellows, they couldn't give the charity. They had no time. They were busy with their yogic performances, being first class. Therefore, they fell down. Whereas the wives, they said, Krishna, Balaram, they want something immediately. Where are they? The immediate need was, what does the Lord want? I immediately give it to him. Oh, but it's not first class. Forget that. Who cares about class? Whatever is Krishna, that is the class. Absolute class. It's higher than first class. So we want to train a group of absolute class devotees who are in fact first class, which means they are ready to do whatever is required for the satisfaction of the Lord at the moment when the Lord wants it done. Not that later on we'll do what we want to do when we want to do it. This is absolute class. Absolute class means surrendering to Krishna. It means doing the needful. When spiritual master or Krishna are in need of something to be done, immediate satisfaction of that need is required. This is the real purpose of surrender, the real surrender which is to be learned. How to do what is required for the satisfaction of the Lord. That does not mean you don't learn the books. It does. Because once you learn more and more, you read these books more and more, therefore you learn this quality. That's why just studying other books doesn't help very much. Even other so-called spiritual books. Because that quality of surrender is not given. Prabhupada is always speaking in here in such a way, because it is his life and soul, that one will surrender through hearing these purports. One will surrender because that is the correct methodology of action. Hearing brings action, and action means surrender. Therefore, Prabhupada's purports cause people to surrender to Krishna. Other people's purports may cause people to say, how nice, but they will not surrender. Therefore, these literatures are the most important things. And the knowledge which is coming, this surrender. We should make a parampara of surrendered souls. Everyone surrendered to the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as it is descending in disciplic succession. Parampara of surrendered souls, expanding everywhere. We're just doing the needful all the time. And there's so much need, don't worry, you'll never be unengaged. Piles of need. So one should act according to that need, not according to his mental speculation, according to his own material desires, but according to the way he's requested, according to the way in which the need is pushing him. Surrender to that, and you'll find your life becomes very successful in all respects. All desires will be fulfilled automatically just by surrendering to Krishna's desire. Hare Krishna.
Divine grace of Mr. Party.